Hello and welcome to The Top Story, a podcast with the headlines of the day from our correspondents around the world. I'm Qi Zhi. Coming up in this edition, Israel and Hamas have agreed to a Gaza ceasefire deal after 15 months of fighting. US President Joe Biden has warned of what he describes as an oligarchy of the ultra-wealthy taking root in the country during his farewell address. And a growing number of TikTok users in the United States are beginning to use another Chinese social media app amid the possible ban of the popular platform. We begin in the Middle East. Israel and Hamas have agreed to a Gaza ceasefire deal following intensive mediation by Qatar, Egypt, and the United States. The agreement takes effect on Sunday. As Sun Tianyuan reports, it includes an initial 42-day phase during which over 15 months of fighting in the Strip will halt.
After 15 months of intense conflict, Israel and Hamas have finally reached a ceasefire agreement set to unfold in 3 phases. And the details of the deal have not yet been released. But according to what we know, phase 1 will begin with a complete ceasefire over the next 42 days. Israeli forces are set to withdraw from all densely populated areas in Gaza. And in return, Hamas will release 33 captives, including women, children, and elderly civilians. Israel will also free hundreds of Palestinian detainees, and large-scale humanitarian aid will be allowed into Gaza. And during this phase, both sides will start negotiations aimed at a permanent ceasefire. And moving on to phase 2, we'll focus on securing lasting peace. And over the next 42 days, Hamas is expected to release the remaining hostages, including Israeli male soldiers. And in return, Israel will fully withdraw its troops from Gaza. And in phase 3, we'll see the return of the remains of the deceased captives, while a large-scale reconstruction effort in Gaza will begin.
That was Sun Tianyuan reporting. Hamas has hailed the ceasefire agreement as a victory. A senior official also praised the resilience and sacrifices of Palestinians. The Israeli Security Cabinet and government are convening on Thursday for 2 meetings to vote on the deal. President Isaac Herzog urged the government to approve the deal, describing it as the right, important and necessary move. Meanwhile, family members of Israeli hostages are anxiously awaiting the return of their loved ones.
I think that's amazing. We've been waiting so long for our hostages to finally come home, praying, hoping, and now it's finally happening, and we're so excited, and we can't wait to welcome you all home.
It's a very complicated situation, but first of all, I think that it's very exciting that the hostages are finally coming back home. I do think that the government of Israel is obligated to do the maximum in order to defend its people and bring its hostages back home.
For more details on the ceasefire deal, here's Jonathan Regev from Tel Aviv.
It's a night of mixed emotions here in Israel once this hostage deal was approved, was signed. On the one hand, there's clear excitement, clear joy from the fact that there is a prospect of returning all of the hostages. This is something that Israelis have been waiting for a very long time. This war has been going on for 15 months. The last hostage deal was more than a year ago, and now there's finally a prospect of bringing all of the hostages back. So clear excitement, clear joy regarding that. On the other hand, a lot of concern from the fact that we're speaking of an agreement that has to be implemented in phases, in stages. Phase 1, which is set to begin this coming Sunday, would include the return of 33 Israeli hostages. Most of them are thought to be alive, but that means that 65 hostages are still left in Gaza for the second stage, and the implementation of that second stage, the terms of that second stage have not been finalized, and therefore there's a lot of concern that those 65 hostages may remain in Gaza for a very long time. Of course, there's always the hope that with President Donald Trump in the White House, he will be able to put pressure both on Israel and on Hamas to implement the first stage and then to head on to the second stage. We know that Trump clearly does not want this war to resume and would like to see this hostage deal go through all the way. But there's always a concern in Israel. 65 hostages will remain in Gaza for the second stage, especially the young men and the soldiers that were taken hostage and there's a lot of concern regarding that. But as we said, after more than a year since the previous hostage deal, finally there's some prospect, some agreement that will bring the hostages back. It will begin with 33 of them, and the big hope here in Israel is that eventually, a few weeks from now, maybe 2-3 months from now, all of the hostages will be brought back home. This is the main hope here of the entire Israeli society.
That was Jonathan Regev in Tel Aviv. Locals in Gaza have flocked to the streets to celebrate the ceasefire announcement, but there are also worries and fear as Israeli airstrikes in Gaza on Wednesday killed at least 30 Palestinians and injured many others. The airstrikes came hours after Qatar announced the ceasefire. The Israeli military has not commented on the attacks. Rami Amagari has more from Han Yunis.
Feeling in Gaza is a feeling of joy and happiness and cheerfulness, actually. And the streets, the crowded streets in Gaza now, we saw that the marketplaces are full of people. They are very crowded, and people just look as if they were waiting for the Eid or the feast here, as usual, the occasion for the Muslims, the Al-Fitr Eid or the sacrifice Eid. It's the same. Almost the same, actually, where people are just cheerful, looking cheerful. The markets are full, and some whistling in the streets and in the backyards of the neighborhoods. Some people are cheerful and chanting slogans of joy for this news. But actually, there is, on the other hand, a feeling of worry and anxiety, always also a sort of fear, because the Israeli airstrikes are continuing. And there was a talk about an announcement. An Israeli airstrike hit the vehicle of an activist or a journalism activist in the Nusayrat refugee camp, leaving him dead, and a few others in the vehicle also killed in this very particular strike. So these are very crucial moments for the population in terms of their expectation that is getting high towards a truce, and also in terms of their fear that these moments will bear more strikes, more injuries, or more bombardment by the Israeli forces, as they have been used to observing these moments, these crucial moments, over the past many years when there was a war in the Gaza Strip. That's the feeling, a mix or a mixture of feelings between joy and eagerness, as well as their fears of more Israeli strikes that might hit their neighborhoods.
That was Rami Amagari reporting in southern Gaza. Turning to North America, search teams are looking for human remains from the site of the deadly wildfires which broke out in Los Angeles over a week ago. They say the process could take a long time amid the scale of devastation. Ines Tianshan reports.
Calmer weather conditions have allowed fire crews to get a little more control over the fires raging in Los Angeles. So the search and rescue teams could be deployed to comb through the wreckage, looking for potential human remains.
Every single affected structure within the fire perimeter will be searched. So crews are doing a methodical process of moving through the area, going to every individual structure and searching it, looking for hazards, possibly searching for any victims that may not have made it out of the fire, and they will continue to do this until they cover the entire fire area.
They're also getting help from Mexican firefighters. They've been going through the wreckage of oceanfront houses in Malibu ravaged by the Palisades fire. In some areas that are cleared for safety, contractors are already getting on with debris removal.
This is Operation Get Everything Out of the Way. There's a ton of stuff that's burned. Some of it hasn't. It's just wind damage. There's trees that have fallen. They're blocking sidewalks, streets.
And the Eaton fire has caused massive destruction in residential neighborhoods. This entire row of homes have all been destroyed. I mean, entire tree branch has essentially broken off during those historic windstorms and carried all the way here.
The fires have destroyed more than 12,000 homes, businesses and other structures in just over a week. This scale of destruction is something these teams haven't dealt with before.
When we normally have an incident like this, there isn't quite this amount of search and rescue operations, just due to the fact that there isn't many incidents that we've had that's had this much damage and destruction. So it's a considerable amount of structures to search, thousands, and it's going to be a long process.
High winds and low humidity are expected to continue as investigators search for clues to determine the cause of the fires.
That was Edith Tianshan reporting. Still in the U.S., President Joe Biden has warned of what he describes as an oligarchy of the ultra-wealthy taking root in the country. He made the remarks during his farewell address to the nation as he prepares to hand over power to Donald Trump on Monday. Popin Putin has details.
During his address, did put out a prophetic warning of sorts once he listed his accomplishments to really tell Americans in the background that he was concerned about how the country could fare under a Trump administration. He didn't mention Donald Trump by name, of course, but he did make a number of hints, talking about the dangers of oligarchy, rich and powerful elites that sought to only have power and be profitable.
Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead.
He also talked about the dangers of technology and what he called the tech industrial complex, that of course referring to a number of social media platforms. He lamented the breakdown of the freedom of the press, which of course is a cornerstone of democracy. So his speech very much rolling back our minds to some of his accomplishments while he was in office. Of course, it was only one term, and him coming into office 4 years ago was marked by the Capitol insurrection, again, when Donald Trump didn't want to give up power and claimed the election had been stolen. Of course, this is the same person who he is now handing the White House back to. So in terms of his beliefs of democracy and the importance of the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, important founding documents that the United States was built on, Biden really keen to push that those are the values of the U.S. and to highlight what he believes to be dangers that could possibly be coming. Some of his tone prophetic, but also, again, calling on the American people to do what they can to make sure that U.S. values stay in place. This speech, very much, though, a speech for the future in many ways. Biden, of course, as he exits the White House, has extremely low approval ratings to do with the economy, inflation, immigration on the southern border, as well, of course, that ongoing conflict in Israel and Gaza. So in the current moment, many Americans not impressed with Biden, don't think his accomplishments have been that much to speak of. Of course, they made their voices heard at the ballot box. So this speech very much one for the ages to go down in history. I think Biden hoping that history will look upon him favorably.
That was Popin Putin on President Biden's farewell address. TikTok users in the United States have begun using another Chinese social media app amid a possible ban on TikTok. The app is called Xiaohongshu, meaning Little Red Book, which is often shortened by US users to Red Note. It surged to the top position on Apple's US App Store on Tuesday. Tom Surlis has more.
Despite its contents being predominantly in Chinese, the passion of American users of the Chinese app Red Note seem not to be dented. The newcomers call themselves TikTok refugees, relying on translation tools to navigate Red Note's mostly Chinese ecosystem. The surge in traffic on the Chinese social media application has already made it the most downloaded app in the Apple US App Store.
Ni hao, my name is Isaac and I'm a TikTok refugee from the United States. Hey friend, I am another TikTok refugee and I am usually talking about books.
Don't you? It's nice to meet you. Thanks for taking me and all my friends. I hope we don't break you.
Some say they are joining the app as a form of protest against the US government's decision to ban TikTok over concerns that the Chinese government could use the app to surveil Americans.
We as an American public feel so very silenced and ignored that this right here is our opportunity to really just shove a middle finger up in the air and go, no, we don't like this. You didn't listen to us.
Some see the shift to Red Note as an opportunity to share their life with Chinese friends and improve mutual understanding. Veteran users of Red Note, especially those who speak English, are extending a welcoming hand. They are trying to explain how the app works while others seek to invite these TikTok refugees to their hometowns.
Red Book is a Chinese platform. I think you better learn some Mandarins, which will be more helpful for you to develop in this platform. If you can speak Mandarin, I think you're waiting at the starting line. Maybe I can teach you some useful expressions.
If you see a video that's downright awesome, just comment 6, or double 6, or triple 6. If you see a video that cracks you up, you just comment X, S, W, L.
Such impromptu cultural exchanges were taking place all across Red Note. Founded in 2013 and valued at $17 billion, Red Note allows users to share photos, videos and texts about their lives. The application has nearly 300 million monthly active users globally. US downloads of Red Note were up more than 200% year over year this week. With the mounting influx, Red Note is facing challenges to moderate English language content and build translation tools. The legal water for the Chinese app also remains unclear. Although Red Note isn't named in the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary-Controlled Applications Act under Supreme Court review like TikTok, the law could pave the way for similar bans on other foreign applications.
That was Tom Surtees reporting. And finally, Cuba is welcoming US President Joe Biden's decision to remove the country from Washington's list of state sponsors of terrorism. Luis Chirino has more on Cuba's response.
Washington's decision was announced on Tuesday, just days before President Biden set to leave office. The move came nearly 4 years to the day after former President Donald Trump put Cuba back on the list, just as he was leaving office. On the heels of the U.S. announcement, the Cuban government issued a statement praising the move as a step in the right direction, but noting it's still limited in scope because the U.S. trade embargo remains in force. Cuban authorities said the move drops measures damaging the Cuban people and the economy, and reiterated their willingness to hold dialogue with the U.S. on the basis of mutual respect. Cubans, politicians from across the Americas, along with former U.S. diplomats and supportive organizations, have long called for the removal of Cuba from the blacklist, since it hindered Cuba's trade capacities and engagement with foreign groups. U.S. President Biden also rescinded a 2017 Trump-era order that severely restricted American financial dealings with Cuban companies. And he suspended a U.S. measure that allows U.S. citizens to sue foreign companies over properties that were confiscated by the Cuban government after 1959. In a parallel move, Cuba announced the release of 553 prisoners who were serving time for various crimes. This the result of talks that have been taking place between Cuba and Catholic Church leaders at the Vatican. The U.S. action has been long awaited by the Cuban people, but there are concerns its impact could be short-lived. Biden's announcement reverses measures put in place by his predecessor Donald Trump. Now, with Trump set to return to the White House next week, there are worries the Cuba hardliner could simply reverse them again.
That was Luis Chirino reporting from Havana. Now, recapping the headlines, Israel and Hamas have agreed to a Gaza ceasefire deal after over 15 months of fighting. US President Joe Biden has given his farewell address, warning of what he describes as an oligarchy of the ultra-wealthy taking root in the country. And a growing number of TikTok users in the US have begun using another Chinese social media app amid a possible ban of the popular platform. And that's it for this edition of The Top Story, a podcast that brings you world headlines every weekday. For more news in politics, business, sports and culture, you can subscribe to the Beijing Hour a 1-hour podcast news magazine program. We welcome and appreciate all ratings and reviews. I'm Qi Zhi. Thank you for listening.